Cowpens, a place where many fought and some died. Some were right and some were wrong, where the patriots needed victory at all costs. Hi, I'm Hunter Crawley, giving you the full report on the Cowpens Living History event, January 13th of 2007. Watch and listen to the people who can almost take you back in time, 226 years ago.
Ready?
What is your impression?
Captain, 2nd South Carolina Regiment.
Was your unit at Cowpens?
No, my unit was not at Cowpens. It had been captured when Charleston fell in 1780.
What would Continental units have done during the battle?
During the battle at Cowpens, the Army was drawn up into 3 lines. The Continentals were put into the 3rd line. Militia sharpshooters were on the 1st line. They were to fire 2 shots, fall back into the 2nd line with more militia, which would fire an additional 2 shots at the enemy, and then retreat around the back of the Continentals and reform. The Continentals were to take the brunt of the British attack and stop them.
What is your impression?
We're 1st Maryland, and we fought down here. We're the last line.
What did your group do?
We were the backbone. We were stationed very 3rd line back. Killed the Brits.
What other infantry units were there?
Delaware and militia units and militia cavalry.
And Washington's cavalry.
My impression is the 3rd Continental Light Dragoons, part of William Washington's light cavalry during the battle.
Was your unit or group present at Cowpens?
Yes, it was. We had a very important role that we played.
Well, what did your unit do?
Well, we were part of the reserve outfit, and we helped break the British line when they made a charge, and aided in the successful win.
Did anybody see the guns fire?
And we aided in the successful win for the American forces here at Cowpens.
If your commander was shot, what would you most likely be to do?
Well, you'd look for someone to take command, whoever that may be, and if there's no one else around, maybe you should do it yourself.
I portray a militiaman from the back country of South Carolina.
Was your unit or group in the battle here?
We the South Carolina Rangers. We was under Pickens men that fought here, and we made up the 1st and 2nd line.
Okay, well, what did your unit or group do?
We did what General Morgan asked us to do. We fired 2 rounds and all aimed at the officers, and so the British wouldn't have anyone to lead them.
How were militiamen different from other soldiers?
Well, the militiamen were civilian soldiers. We were just in a general area. Every man between the age of 16 and 60 had belonged to the militia. The militia did not; they were not professional soldiers, but civilian soldiers. Most of them were farmers or hunters, and we were just called out in time of emergency to serve in the militia.
Do militia fight on horseback?
They will ride on a horse. Some of them that own horses will ride on a horse, but they don't fight on the horse. Not normally. Now they might if they're trying to get away from somebody and they're having to fire from a horse to try to get away. But usually they'll ride on the horse, get off, dismount, fight, and then get back on the horse and ride somewhere else.
I am portraying an American musician, a fifer, for the 2nd South Carolina Regiment.
Was your group at Cowpens?
No, we were not.
What does an Army musician do?
What do musicians do? Musicians are the communication system for the officers. If an officer has to send a message to the other end of the line, the musicians have a tune that they'll play or a drum beating that they'll beat so that everybody will know what the message is.
Okay. What instruments do you guys play?
Well, I play a fife, and here's my fife right here. This is the fife, and we also have a drum. Here's a drum right over here that we're getting.
Okay.
And when it's time for the men to assemble, we have a tune we play. And when it's time for the men to go to bed, we play a tune. When it's time to eat, we play a tune. That's the kind of thing that we do. And sometimes we just play in camp just to lift spirits, like turning on the radio.
My impression is distaff with the 2nd South Carolina Regiment.
Was your group at the battle?
Our group was not at the Battle of Cowpens. However, we're representing many of the groups that were here.
What did distaff do?
They cooked, they cleaned, they sewed, they made candles, they foraged for food. And they made sure all the soldiers had pretty much all the extra things that they needed to maintain their energy during battle.
My impression?
Yeah.
33rd Light, a British regular soldier from Britain.
Okay.
From overseas.
Was your unit or group at Cowpens?
I'm not sure. Hey, were we at Cowpens? No, we weren't. I didn't think so.
Okay.
But they did have redcoats there. But they were, yeah. We were not here. 33rd was not here in Cowpens.
What would be your main job?
My main job is a private, a soldier. I was supposed to keep my equipment straight, keep my musket clean and firing in well working order. All my buttons had to make sure all my buttons were well and secured, and all my equipment clean, and my personal body clean.
Okay.
Ready as a fighting soldier.
The impression I do is Tarleton's Legion infantry. Legion is a corps composed of more than one branch of service, and in the case of Mr. Tarleton, it was infantry as well as cavalry. I do the infantry.
Was your unit or group at the battle?
Yes, it was. In fact, they were almost decimated at this battle. Legion infantry ceased to exist, with the exception of 3 companies, and the survivors were garrisoned in Charleston afterwards. The rest of the survivors followed Mr. Tarleton into the Carolinas and North Carolina and Virginia.
What did your unit do?
Our unit was basically infantry support for cavalry. One good example of that is the Waxhaws. Tarleton charged with his cavalry at the Waxhaws. His infantry, who had doubled up on the cavalrymen's horses to get to the battle, they rode 100 miles and covered it in 56 hours. They were, like I said before, they were doubled up. In other words, they were riding 2 people to a horse. That's why they were able to catch up with Colonel Buford at the Waxhaws.
Do you know who the Death Heads were?
The Death Heads, that was the 17th Regiment of Light Dragoons. And the reason they were called that was because the insignia they wore on their leather and brass helmets is the skull and crossbones, and that's where they got that name from. They were also known in the British Army as the Death or Glory Boys.
My job here most days is I welcome people to the park. I tell them where they can go to walk the trail. Sometimes I lead guided walks to the trail and tell the story of the battlefield of the battle while I'm doing it. I answer a lot of questions. We have some people who don't know anything and some people who know a whole lot about the battle and about the Southern campaign. So just get into discussions, and it's kind of like teaching, but not in a classroom. I really enjoy it.
What do you think the most important part of Cowpens is?
Probably the most lasting important effect of Cowpens was the men lost here. That ended up pushing Cornwallis back north before he'd planned to, keeping him out of the South before he could drum up all the support he'd wanted to here. That's probably the most important effect as far as the rest of the war. For general history, this is only the third double envelopment in history, and so that's pretty impressive. We have a lot of Army people come out who want to study how that happened, because the first two were in BC years, and then it took until Cowpens to have a third one, and there's never been a fourth one.